Good afternoon. How may I help you?
Call Review's Call Vision means that right now I'm analyzing your digital marketing spend through a unique caller tracking number that lets you know the source that brought the customer to your site. Multitasking. It's my jam.
Hey everyone, welcome back for another webinar. ASOTU Edge webinar. We're joined with Call Review and Relevant Dealer. I'm really excited about this one. We're launching a 3-part series on how dealers can win with GA4. Today we're going to be talking specifically about what dealers can do to prepare today. So we've got Scott Bledsoe with us and Steve Lauries with Relevant Dealer. We're going to be breaking down a side-by-side comparison on Universal Analytics compared to GA4. We'll be talking about bounce rate and where that went, as well as how to install GA4 and some of the must-have settings. So again, we've got Scott Bledsoe. He's joining us. He is the Vice President of Call Review. Steve Lauries is CEO of Relevant Dealer. And I'm going to toss it over to Paul J. Daly and Kyle Mounts here to kick us off.
Hey there. Thank you, AMJ.
Yo, thanks, Anne-Marie. There we go. We call her AMJ. Paul, here's the thing. We're going to kick this off just like this, Please, everybody, if you're watching right now and you're looking at July 30th with fear in your eyes about Google Analytics and everything coming down the pipe, do not worry. The sky is not falling. Everything is not coming to an end, and your world is not falling apart. However much all of the YouTube videos want to say.
I want to tell you, it's typical the way things like this roll out, right? The people that were paying a lot of attention, a long time ago, it felt like the steamroller scene in Austin Powers, where like someone's yelling something bad's going to happen, but then the steamroller is so far down the hallway and it's moving so slowly that they're like, oh, there's actually not any danger. And then here we go right next to the point where things are going to shift. And then this massive wave of anxiety creeps up. And so I love that what we're going to do today and what this webinar is all about is starting to calm the anxiety and realize here's some basic step-by-steps. Yes, even you can be prepared by July 30th.
Absolutely, yeah. Or June 30th, July 1st.
I'm sorry, you said July 30th, I think.
My bad.
Yeah.
Did I say July 30th?
But well, June 30th is a lot closer.
And here's the thing, like there are many people in the industry that can help out. If you don't know, we've got some really great experts on the call with us today and have just like there's a walkthrough. We're going to have 2 more of these on deeper integrations of settings, but there's a quick way to make sure that you still know what's going on in your business.
We're baby stepping.
Ads are going well. We'll take the baby steps. We'll unpeel we'll peel back the onion. And hey, look, you're not going to be an expert overnight. Even some of the website companies are not all the way there. But we've got some good tools, some ways to get you going. So why don't we bring the friends?
Bring the friends.
We're going to bring in Steve and Scott and get you into GA4.
Good afternoon. How may I help you?
When Scott here, alert is busy. Alert, I can capture alert over 30 pieces of information, so you never miss an opportunity.
And your last
alert.
Name? Great.
Hey there.
There it is.
I love the commercials. Does the like real life bubble guy have a name?
Revy.
Is that really his name, or are you just making this up?
That's not the dude's name. That's the character's name. But
understood.
Yeah,
yes. Oh, I love it. I was wondering that.
That's
well, welcome. Great. Thanks for joining us today.
All right, so let's get into it. Maybe
he's ready to go.
Let's get into it because we got a lot to cover, a little bit of time. We're going to go fire hose. If you missed something, we're recording everything. We'll send it back out. We got a little deck. We'll have some questions. Scott, he's our color commentator over here, going to add some unique value. Steve is like local brand authority on GA4. And even if he's only a year ahead of everyone, because that's all the time we've been given, he's got some authority. So we'll poke questions. And Paul and I are going to play, as Paul stated yesterday on our prep call, the lowest common denominator, and we're just going to ask questions that hopefully everyone's asking. If you're on this call and you have questions, make sure drop them in the chat. Our team is looking at those questions. If we can't get to them during the call and during the webinar, we will make sure and follow up with answers to those questions to every attendee post-event. So please just drop your questions in as they go. We can't promise we'll get to all of them, but we will try. So let's take it away. Let's get into GA4.
Rock and roll. All right, so a lot of big changes, obviously, and a lot of folks that are really, as you said, concerned, right? We're down to a couple days left, and we're seeing that countdown timer that just keeps drilling on. So we know Google's serious about this change. Whether we're ready for it or not, it's going to happen, right? So there's still a lot of folks, as you mentioned, that are just still waiting to get down to that moment. They may not have everything prepared yet, right? So we're going to go through and talk, real basic about how to get that set up, right? And get GA4 established on your website to make sure they can start recording. Even if you're not ready to dive into the data right now, that's okay. You want to get that script on the site so it starts recording that data, right? So with that, on the implementation side of it, then scroll for me. All right, we've got the first step of that is, of course, setting up the account itself, right? So just going to accounts.google or analytics.google. If you set up your account for it, it's free. It's not going to cost you any money. There's no hidden charges, just like Universal Analytics, right? But you can use your existing Google account, or you can create a new one that's specific to it.
You can do this even if you have Universal Analytics already set up. You can
Correct.
add GA4. Yep. Don't be
Correct.
scared.
And the other part to that too is that you want to be very cautious that there's not already somebody that has set up GA4 like on your behalf, right? You want to make sure you're the owner of your analytics accounts, because it's going to be here for a while. The last version is 20 years old, something like that.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So once you've got the account itself set up, you're going to get a little quick how-to or for installation. And there's really 3 ways to do that. Now, we created a PDF document, which gives you the step-by-step, blow-by-blow of how to do that. And so we'll send that out to anybody that wants that, right? But really, there's 3 ways to get this added to your website. First of all, get that measurement ID, shoot it over to your website provider, and they'll take it from there for almost every website provider that handles in the automotive space, right? The second way we hear about, right, which is people using the existing Google tag, which is their analytics tag. Google actually has said, you know what, really not the best method for that. So you may have to later replace that method anyway. So really the first or the third is the best way to do that. And then the third option, of course, is using Tag Manager, which has a pre-configured method. So all you have to do is, if you have Tag Manager already installed on your site, you just jump in, click that element, and then as a tag, and then put in your measurement ID. And that's all there is to it.
Now, question real quick, because you said like, hey, there might have been someone that set up an account for you and you're the admin, you're not. I've heard that there are some web providers that are like, no, we're not giving admin access. What's the recommendation on like, should you have 2 or should you have 1, or should you force them to take theirs off and only use yours? What's the best practice there?
Yeah, so your website provider is a partner, right? So ideally, they're going to want to use or want to share that access with you. If they're not, it's not going to cause a data disruption in anything that we've seen so far. Unlike GA, the original, right? For the first few years, you could not use or you didn't want to use more than one instance because it would kind of cause conflicts. This is a new build, right? It's a ground up complete build. So they built it knowing that this is going to happen. So likely you're going to have an OEM who's going to have their GA4 installed. You're going to have a website provider and then yours, right? But you still want to keep it limited because it does cause some page loading issues if you get a lot of them on there, right? Because it takes time for those tools to load.
Got it.
Right on. So once you've got it set up, there's 4 things that you want to make sure that you take care of pretty quickly, right? So if you've already done it and you've not seen this step or not done this step, like jump in and do it today, all these things are really easy, right? First thing's pretty obvious. Make sure that people that you want to have access to it, right? So make sure the owner or the dealer principal has access, even if they're not going to use it. It's good that they have a ownership access to it. Second part of that is turning on Google Signals. And again, in the document, we've got step-by-step of how to do each one of these steps to make that very easy for you. But Google Signals, just like in Universal Analytics, is what brings in that demographic data, right? And that helps you to visualize and understand that your customer's behavior a little bit better. Third thing in that is linking it to Google Ads. So to do that, you have to have access to your Google Ads account. If you don't have access to it, make sure your paid search partner then either gives you access to it, which is preferred, right? Or that they have access to your GA4 account. So those can link. That's going to bring in all that ad data, right? So it's going to tell you about campaigns and ad groups and spends and be able to see all that information together inside of GA4. And then fourth is linking Search Console. Okay, Search Console is your organic side, right? So it's bringing in all the organic keywords. And again, it brings all that into GA4 for you, right? So we'll kind of talk through some of the things that have changed. And if you've not logged into GA4 yet, it's going to be a world different, right? So for most dealers we talk to, unquestionably, right? So for most dealers we talk to, this screen here, the account overview page, this is really where a lot of dealers spend any time that they do inside of GA4. So those 7 metrics that are displayed here are kind of what they use to determine whether campaigns are working or whether overall what the feel of the site is. Well, now inside of GA4, when we're looking at that platform, you see it's a completely different view, right? There are a lot of graphs, a lot of cards as they refer to them that are all displaced. Now, you can customize this, right? But if you're looking for those same metrics that you've looked at for years, going to take a little bit of effort to get to those. All right. So we're talking about those infamous 7, right? These are the ones we're referring to. So the top 3, the sessions, the users, page views, those are all going to be there, right? The only caveat here is that in page views, it's no longer considered page views. It's called views. Right. And that's because in GA4, what they've done is instead of looking at it as your website as a whole and what they're trying to measure, they're more focused on a page level. So all these metrics are more page focused instead of site focused, right? And that's a big differential when it comes to analytics. So
yeah, and I think like just the reason why behind that is good to explain. You know, when you think about a website, and historically, so much of traffic to a website was dedicated to getting someone to a home page, but especially with ads and with the way that organic SEO happens, we just get people to other places on the site. And so measuring based on the way a page is performing as opposed to how the entire site is performing is actually going to give you better analytics on whether or not that page is good for the user in the end, because that's also what Google is looking at. So just kind of some like why behind that actually helps you understand like, well, why am I measuring things differently? Well, it's because Google's measuring it differently. And actually on the other end, your customer is measuring whether or not they're going to be successful on your site based on pages, not on how many pages deep can I go.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely. And, with that, again, the one thing to keep in mind too, is that page views aren't just for that particular page, but it's also incorporates screen views. So it's a sub-metric that's part of views now, right? One of the little changes inside of GA4. So as we turn to session duration, this is something that is there, but most people just don't realize that it's there, right? And the reason for that is that when you look at any of the regular reports or you're on any of the overview pages, you're not going to see that metric automatically included in any of those reports. To see it, you actually have to go into to the report level itself and click on the little pencil and then look for it in the metrics. So there's a bunch of metrics that are available that you can display into the reporting format, but you have to, 1, know that they're there, and then 2, go in to find those, right? So it's still there, just not as easy, and it's definitely not in the upfront of the account overview like we used to see, right? Bounce rate, this is kind of one of those unique ones, because as we've been working with GA4 for more than a year now, what we've seen is that bounce rate has kind of shown up, disappeared, shown up, disappeared, right? So, and the reason for that is that Google's big focus, not only on just on a page view level, but also on an engagement level, right? Which is kind of like a red flag for us when we're thinking about how they're going to adjust and change for the search algorithm, right? It's all about who's engaging on the page and how they're engaging, right? So instead of having a bounce rate that is showing up on the reports directly, what we have instead is an engagement rate, right? So just like pages per session, you can still find that in those additional metrics, but again, you got to look for it and then apply that. But on the report standard, you're going to see the engagement rate, right? So that's going to be those items that you're flagging as conversions and things that are setting up as events that'll flag whether or not those are engagements or not. All right. Next thing we have is the pages per session. So very similar, right, to the other two. Again, it's there. You can add that into the reporting, but it's just not going to be out of the wrapper there and available for you. And then last is new sessions, right? So for new sessions, what we see here is that the new sessions as a percentage is gone. We're not seeing that anywhere in any of the reportings whatsoever. So instead, it's still going to show you how many sessions were new, and you're going to see that then in the reporting, but it's going to be on a user level as opposed to a session level. But
so
then
you're telling me I got to use a calculator
every time. Or use an external program or external reporting tool that's going to help you to be able to see that and visualize it in the way that you're used to.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. And like we said, there's a lot of different reporting that you can do inside of GA4. Nice thing about this is that what they do is they allow you to be able to put up to 12 metrics in any one report. Out of the box, there's 10 metrics that are included in most of these views that they're showing here, right? So when you start adding, if you want to see all three of those, bounce rate, pages per session, and new users, you got to get rid of something, right? Or you have to create a new report view so you can see this, right? Which makes it a little bit cumbersome for you, because then you want to be able to name those and track the metrics the way that you want to, right? But there's tools out there like call reviews, which allow us to be able to have all that information into a report view in a way that we're already used to seeing. There you go.
Yeah. This is a sample report from Call Review that shows exactly what Stephen was just talking about, right? This is a custom built report that we have that pulls in all the data from GA4. This is a dealer focused overview report that you're looking at, just kind of showing some of the key metrics that most dealers are really interested in. Customers of our CallVision DNI solution with Google Analytics integration really should be pretty familiar with this report, but GA4 does give us some additional insights that we've included in this latest version, namely the ability to group pages together for a simple at-a-glance view, and we can also show the number of active users there as well. This second report with Universal Analytics, we were able to show marketing managers how their marketing dollars are being spent with each digital marketing campaign. And we can still do that with GA4. And this report shows that. This shows the visitor traffic for all the digital marketing campaigns, along with communication from each of those visitors that reached out to the dealership by submitting a form, chatting, and of course, phones. So we analyze every phone call and determine the department that the call got routed to. And for sales calls, we even determine whether an appointment was made on that call. And you can see all of this in the results of this report in the sample here. Call Review is the only call monitoring solution that can actually do this with GA4 today, by the way. And on top of that, GA4 gives us some additional metrics. You see those at the bottom half of this report that include visitor activity and how it impacts those communications. So we're looking at things like, when people scroll on the page, how does that have an impact on whether they reach out to you via chat, form submission, or by phone call? If people are having to scroll and then they're making a call, they're getting the information they want, and then they want to make a call to book an appointment, you might want to address that usability issue, right? Get that information that's really compelling them and leading them to make that phone call above the fold, so to speak. So all of that you can get right out of reports like this.
That's awesome. Earlier, just real quick, you mentioned DNI, and I think it'd be important to understand what DNI is. So give us a definition, and
Sure.
then how every event that's not on page can inform Google Analytics and thereby ads exactly what's happening past just I clicked a button or I made a call. How is Call Review, and how can people be asking their phone providers to make sure that they're getting the best data possible back to analytics and back to ads? So DNI and then reporting based on non-website metrics?
Yeah, so really the two are kind of intermingled. So DNI stands for dynamic number insertion. What that effectively means is super simple. It's like a really complex, scary thing, but it's really simple. What it means is we can dynamically switch out the phone number or phone numbers on your website. Most dealers put that right at the top of the page, right? A number for sales, a number for service, a number for parts, perhaps. We can switch those numbers out dynamically and show a unique number, a unique phone number for every visitor that comes to the dealer's website. Why is that important? Because now we can track when that user calls. We know how they got to the site. That's how we can track what digital marketing campaign got them there, right? Google Analytics is tracking what they're doing on the site, what pages they're viewing, whether they're scrolling or not, whether they're clicking on different things, looking at a VDP, all that good stuff. It tracks all of that. But then on top of that, if they make a phone call, even if it happens even the next day, right, that phone number is unique to that visitor. So we can track that phone call and we can marry it back to that campaign. So Google Analytics 4 changes a bunch. We've talked about that. It doesn't allow us to marry it back to the actual user session for privacy reasons, but we can, Call Reviews figured out how to marry it back to that digital marketing campaign. So if you've got a Facebook ad that's driving traffic to your site, and let's say that you've got an email campaign also driving traffic to your site, that's great. You can see how many visitors are getting to your site, but how many of those are actually reaching out to the dealership and booking appointments? If you have DNI, that allows us to track those phone calls and attribute those back to which ones came from visitors that came from the Facebook ad or the email campaign or wherever they came from, and then what actually happened on those calls. That way you can make sure you're getting the most out of your marketing spend. What happens with the visitors, as I mentioned, when they're on the site, all of that is tracked by Google Analytics, and we surface some of those metrics. We think the really the valuable ones that really help you understand kind of core user behaviors along with those communications. So we kind of connect those dots so you can see what are people doing or not doing, and either reaching out to communicate with the dealership or not, right? Does it take, like I said a minute ago, does it take a page scroll to actually get to people wanting to communicate with the dealer?
Well, that's, that rolls into a question from Jeff Revilla from the audience today. Can you see true scroll activity at the user level?
Yeah, the answer to that is absolutely. So, one of the things that we'll see inside of GA4 is that you're going to have an issue with thresholding, right? Where it's going to block out some of the data in some of the reports. Right, so that's going to limit your ability inside of GA4 to do that. But when we're looking into, we're looking at the reports in the call review format, really easy thing to add that. So you can see what percentage and what campaign is creating those page scrolls. And it's just as simple as adding an extra element to that report.
Great.
One of the things that Universal Analytics and Google Analytics have a lot different is Universal Analytics had a lot of what I would call like drillable items or clickable that lean to the next thing. If someone's used to that user experience, how can they get the same kind of output from GA4 that they would experience of like, oh, I can click on that, then keep clicking on it, then keep clicking on it until I get down to the root of something? Is there a similar user experience or a way to drill into the data that people can be looking at as they start to discover in GA4?
Yeah, what GA4, what we noticed is they've gotten rid of a lot of the reports. If you look at that left-hand navigation, right, a lot of those elements have been removed. And what they've tried to do is simplify things, right, in the new construction of this. So they're adding those secondary dimensions that replace some of those things that are available there. So when you're inside of that report and you've got the little plus button, you can add then based on any other metrics that you want to see that in comparison to. And they're still clickable. So when you're looking at the list of items and you want to drill into, you're in default session default channel sources, right? You can still click on paid and then go into the next level of that.
Great. We have another question. This is from Daniel Lim. How can we get a copy of that step-by-step document that Steve mentioned in the webinar?
Right on. So
I can answer that. We can send that out to all attendees after this webinar. So we'll make sure that everybody gets that. It was also available for you in the registration page and the email that came afterwards, but we'll be sending an email follow-up so that everybody can get access to that that saw the webinar.
Yeah, that also has relevant dealer as well as call reviews email address. So if y'all have any questions, any problems, if anything's not clear in that document, reach out to us. We'll be happy to help you in any way we can.
We have another question. It says, what's the best way to attribute a hard conversion like a call, tracking the inbound source like we did in Universal GA?
That's a great question. And in our future webinar, we'll get into obviously events versus conversions in a lot more detail, right? But the simple answer to that is to make sure that the information is coming into GA4 as an event and then flag that as a conversion. And you can do that in the admin side of it, either because it'll display those under the events, and you can just click on the toggle to mark it as a conversion. Or if you know exactly what that event name is, you can add that conversion by listing the event name there.
Very easy.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, Scott and Steve, that was like a fire hose of information. We got a ton out there. It's like just touching the surface of GA4, but hopefully if you were listening, you got a little like, okay, the sky isn't falling, the world isn't freaking out, I can get this turned on, I can start to see my analytics. And probably if you are on one of the major web providers and with some of the major providers in the automotive space, there may already be some data sitting there for you and ready to go, so you can get it connected up. If you'd like to, please reach out to Relevant Dealer or Call Review for any questions. We'll send that document, as we said, after the webinar. And I think Anne-Marie's got a little information on our next webinar coming up.
Hey, everyone. Yep, we do. We've got another one. As I said, it's the first today of a 3-part series. Next is going to be July 26th. We're going to be talking about measuring what matters. Excuse me, measuring what matters using GA4 to measure marketing ROI and its impact on the phones. I know that was a question that was just asked, so we're going to be getting into that next week. We're also going to have a special guest. So we will have Scott back again, our Steve friend back again, our friend Steve back again. And then next week, we're going to have a special guest. Brian Pasha is going to join us. So he's very well versed in it as well. We hope you'll join us too. And yep, we'll get the registration out to you as well. If you need to download the presentation, you can do that on our registration page. And again, we'll be sending that in a follow-up email. Thanks again.